speaker in tonight's webinar, Surviving and Thriving Through Your Teens Roller Coaster Years. Our speaker tonight is Amberly Nichols. Amberly is a private practice clinician serving children and families in the Michiana area. Amberly got her undergraduate degree in social work from St. Mary's College in South Bend, her graduate degree in clinical social work from New York University. Amberly is a registered play therapy supervisor and certified autism specialist. She is also the mother of teenagers and enjoys participating in the local theater scene, which all leads to her being a little dramatic. We welcome Amberly, and we thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight on this conversation about teens and raising them. It is one of the toughest jobs you'll ever love, to steal a phrase. We're going to start tonight with a little funny. Welcome to being a parent of a teenager. Prepare for a large amount of eye rolling, emotional outbursts, and thoughts of running away. And that's just the parents. So I want you folks to know that I am in the trenches with you. And as a literal expert on child development, emotional development, raising children, my own personal teenagers in my house living with me still hate me at least once a day. Last night, it was because I had the audacity to suggest that since chores had not been finished when they were supposed to be finished at 4:30, that perhaps we should get them done before everybody sat down to dinner. And that if that continued to be an issue, we were going to start changing the Wi-Fi password until chores were done. No big deal. They would still get the Wi-Fi password as long as chores were done. And I discovered that I had single-handedly destroyed summer. So that's fun for me. But I'm in it with you guys. So when we look at some of these more challenging behaviors from our teens, it's really important to look at everything through the development or through the lens of development. And so that's what this next slide is going to be all about. Now, I know that some of these words are tiny. It can be a little bit hard to read, and that's okay, because we're not going to get too deep in the weeds with what everything is called. We're just going to kind of go through that middle line is the line that's important, and I'll be going through that. So we're looking at what our teenagers are going through right now, how that's been shaped by what they've already gone through developmentally, and then what they're going to be going through after they come through the other side of their adolescence. And I actually found another quote that I thought was pretty clever, something to the effect of, it just popped up in my social media, something to the effect of, snow and adolescence are the only two problems that will go away on their own if you just ignore them long enough. Our teens do get through the other side, so that's good. But starting at infancy, the question that's being asked in infancy is, can I trust the world? So what this deals with is just basic safety issues. If I'm hungry, is somebody going to feed me? If I'm cold, is someone going to keep me warm? If I'm crying, is someone going to comfort me? If I have a need, is someone going to be there to fill that need for me? Moving on from there, in childhood and preschool years, kids are starting to act independently from their parents. And so the questions, is it okay to be me? Is it okay for me to act? Really is about, how do my parents respond to me as I'm taking those first steps, or if I am refusing to eat certain foods, or if I'm throwing food on the floor. Am I gently encouraged and supported to learn right from wrong during those periods of time when I'm starting to act outside of my parents? Or am I punished or yelled or shamed for making mistakes when I'm starting to do those first independent things outside of my parents? Which then leads us into school. So that question, can I make it in the world of people and things, is really about competency. So this is also the age when kids are starting to spend time outside of their parents' realm and being taken care of by caregivers, teachers, and they're surrounded by their peers. And so they're finding out, can I read as well as my peers? Am I able to learn as well as my peers? This is also the period of time for kids when they're starting to dip their toes into things like starting to play musical instruments, or they might join a sports team. And again, As I start to explore these areas of competency, can I kind of find a niche? Is there something that I can do that I feel good doing and that I'm good at? How are the adults around me reacting to that exploration? Am I being supported? And am I being encouraged? Because I'm going to make mistakes, or I might be struggling. Am I nurtured through that, or am I treated harshly? Are people shaming me for making mistakes? Or if I'm having struggles in school, how are people responding to that? Are they accommodating me and supporting me, or are they making me feel badly about myself? Which leads us to the teen years. And that question is a really heavy one. Who am I? Who can I be? And think for a moment how hard that question is to answer, even for some adults. But that is the primary question that our teens are dealing with during a time when physiologically there's a lot going on for them. So once you hit puberty, the body starts to be flooded with all of these hormones, which creates a lot of really, really big feelings. The issue is the frontal lobe, which is the part of your brain that helps you figure out what am I going to do with all of those really big, strong feelings. It's not completely developed yet. So that frontal lobe isn't developed until you're about 23 years old. So that is a very, very hard question to answer when you're also struggling with how am I even going to be dealing with my emotions, and how do I know what to do with all of these big feelings. So then how you're supported during this period of time, which is really those teen years, it's kind of the last big hurrah of childhood development before it leads into your adult experience. And so early adulthood, can I love? And that's not just about romantic love. That really has to deal with what is my ability to connect with other people? How am I able to engage with other people out in the world? And you can see, if you start backtracking, have I been kept safe? Have I been encouraged to make mistakes while still being guided and being taught right from wrong? Have I been encouraged through all of this self-exploration? That affects how you engage with the rest of the world outside of your family's home as you're moving out. And then moving into adulthood, into that 40 through 64 years old, can I make my life count? What is my purpose in life? Do I have a purpose? Do I feel good in that purpose? And then ultimately into maturity, looking back at your life and was it okay to have been me? How did I do? Does anybody have any questions about development before I move on? Do we have anything? Okay.
I don't see anything yet.
No, nothing yet. That's fine. Okay. So the first question to ask is, what is actually normal? A lot of these challenging behaviors can seem like a mental health issue when really it's just part of typical teenage development. So starting with sleep, a lot of parents think that their kids wanting to stay up late and sleep later in the morning, sometimes into the early afternoon, is a behavioral issue. But what science tells us is that once puberty hits, with all of that influx of hormones, melatonin, which is the hormone in our brain that helps us feel sleepy at night, doesn't start flowing until sometimes even close to 1 o'clock in the morning. And the problem is that you're not getting sleepy until about 1 o'clock in the morning, but teenagers still need between 8 and 10 hours of sleep. And the problem is that we live in a 9-to-5 world. And sometimes even earlier, when you consider that most high schools, middle schools, high schools are starting between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning. And for our kids who are involved maybe in some extracurricular sporting practices, those start even earlier. So we're dealing with a chronically under-rested population. And I don't know about anybody else, but if I don't get enough sleep, I am a bear. So chronically feeling fatigued and unrested can definitely play a part in some of these other really challenging behaviors, including moodiness and distress intolerance. So this is the roller coaster part of dealing with your teens' roller coaster years. So again, they're being flooded with hormones and really strong feelings, but the part of their brains that help them figure out what am I supposed to do with that isn't fully on board. And what happens a lot of times with parents is this causes a really big disconnect. So your kids seem kind of chronically irritated, grouchy, really hypersensitive, especially to redirection and any kind of criticism. And sometimes that reaction can seem so big to us and illogical because we have our frontal lobes are fully developed. So how often have you either thought to yourself or said directly to your child, why is this such a big deal? This isn't something to get so upset about. I can think of 5 different ways that you can handle this situation and resolve it. Why are you so upset? It's obvious to us because we've gone through it and also our frontal lobes are developed. We've got the capacity to deal with those big feelings, but our kids aren't completely there yet. Another factor is that 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Now, this really applies more to early adolescents, like the 13 and 14-year-olds. And what I mean by that is 1 minute they could be playing with Barbies or engaging in imaginative play with their friends, like going out into the woods and building forts. And then the next minute, they want to be at the mall hanging out with their friends or playing Call of Duty. All of that's okay. They can be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Maybe playing Call of Duty, depending on your family values, might not be something that you want them to do, but them wanting to play Call of Duty is normal and expected, and that part is okay. Withdrawing from family. This is a really hard one for a lot of parents because if you remember, I wish there was a hand raise function for this. When your kids are toddlers, they want to be with you all of the time. You can't even go to the bathroom without them. They just want to be with you. They get to 13, 14, 15, and all of a sudden being called to the family dinner table as a punishment, they want to be left alone. It is very easy for parents to internalize that as, what have I done wrong? Why is my child always mad at me? And it's not really that they're angry with you, even if they seem irritable. This is just a normal part of their development. They're starting to spend more time with their peers. Their peers are just going to be more important to them than you are at this point in time. Super important not to internalize that because that's just a normal part of their development. These next 3 bullet points are really hard because it isn't something that we want to say this stuff is okay. It's definitely stuff to keep an eye on and things that we need to deal with and address with our kids, but it is a normal part of development. So lying and keeping secrets. In this regard, what I'm really talking about is kind of the smaller lies, if you can call it that. I work with a lot of kids who say that it's easier to lie than do the task they're being asked to do or not do. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't really want to get into conversations about the things that they're lying about. Maybe they have a secret romantic partner that they didn't want you to know about, or maybe something is going on in their peer group that's causing them a lot of distress. So it's just harder for them to talk about it. And so they withdraw with you and they're keeping secrets. It's not really, it's not done maliciously. It's just really hard for them to do what they're supposed to be doing. And so that's why they lie about it. It's just too hard to talk about. And sometimes they feel overwhelmed. Going back a couple bullet points, I missed the part about distress intolerance that I wanted to address. A lot of our kids feel chronically overwhelmed. And again, it does have a little bit to do with that frontal lobe that helps us execute. It's executive functioning. And so you want to say to them, this is only 5 questions on a math exam. It's not that big of a deal, but they just can't deal with it. I don't know if any of your teenagers have used that exact phrase. I know that mine have. I just can't deal with it. And so that's another reason why they will lie about things. It's hard for them to do the things that they're supposed to be doing. And so it's easier to just lie and not talk about it and hide. So which also goes into the defiance and challenging boundaries and rebellion. Maybe you start to get things like, no, I'm not doing that, about chores that never used to be a problem. You get a lot of pushback. Maybe they're starting to verbalize or question some of your family beliefs and values. Why do I have to go to church if I don't even know what I believe in? This is so unfair. Why do chores have to be done at a certain time? I don't understand. So some of that pushback is super difficult, but also completely normal, part of this time of development. And unfortunately, this is also a time of experimentation. And so what do I mean by experimentation? Really, this is any kind of adult behavior that they're starting to kind of try on what is adulthood about. And for some kids, they see that as expressing sexuality, drinking alcohol, experimenting with drugs. Again, not something that we just say, okay, you know, Amberly Nichols said that this was a part of normal teen development. We're just going to let that go. We definitely need to address it and talk to them about it and set expectations and boundaries, but it is a normal part of development. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, we will move on. What do we need to worry about? So these are some of the things to keep an eye on. Extreme sleep difficulties. So with any of these bullet points, what I really want you to think about are the extremes. So it's not just that my child is having some sleep difficulties. These are sleep difficulties that are causing dysfunction. I can't get out of bed to go to school. I'm constantly sleeping. You can't get me off the couch. That is something that I would want to keep an eye on. Something could be going on medically with your child. It could be a sign of depression. But again, it's that extreme mood swings or extreme moods. So going back to that roller coaster analogy, if you think about a roller coaster, typically with the roller coaster, there's a big lead up, there's one big crash, and then things throughout the rest of the ride is going a little bit more like that. This is typically how it works with kids. It's like this. If you notice that moods are really extreme, really high, really low lows, that's going to be something that you need to keep an eye on. So this is more than just I'm feeling irritable and grouchy and sensitive. This is rage. So you ask me to turn off the Xbox to come up to dinner, and I throw my remote control at you, or I'm feeling hopeless. This is more than I'm just sad or I'm struggling with something. I can't stop crying. Mania, and what I mean by, and I put it in quotations, hyperactivity. I'm constantly, I can't ever go to sleep because I'm just too wound up. I seem really hyperactive all of the time, and there's never a crash. That could be something to look at and maybe talk to a professional about. But really, it should be more like this and less like this. Lack of enjoyment in seemingly any activities. So even with kids that have a limited interest or have limited interests, there should be something in your child's life that is sparking joy for them in some way. So even if it's only one thing, I'm only finding enjoyment in playing my guitar. Unfortunately, for some kids, it's I'm only finding enjoyment in video games. Something should be sparking joy for them. If the only thing that's sparking joy for them is video games, that is also something to keep an eye on. Video games are designed to trigger dopamine, which is the reward chemical in our brain. If that's the only place that they're getting enjoyment, that's kind of its own separate thing. But for me, when I really start to worry is when kids aren't even doing that. You can't get them to do anything. That's really something that you would want to keep an eye on and maybe seek out professional help for. Lying to cover up unsafe behaviors or lying maliciously. So what we're really looking at there are things like, I am telling you that I'm going to this friend's house. Parents are going to be home. We're watching a movie. But what's really happening is I'm sneaking out of that friend's house, or I'm not even going to that friend's house to begin with to meet up with a stranger that I met online. Or I'm meeting up with a group of friends that I know that you're not going to approve of because we're experimenting with drugs. that is something that I would worry about. Or maybe I'm engaging in some cutting behavior, but I'm covering it up. I don't want you to know about that. So that would be another unsafe behavior. Lying maliciously. So I have worked with some teens who they might lie to their friend groups about maybe having a medical condition to garner some sympathy from those friends. They may lie on one of their peers in order to get their peers in trouble with some of the other peers. So that bullying behavior, that would be something that I would be really worried about. Isolating from everyone, including friends. Now, withdrawing from family is normal. Most of the time that withdrawal comes because they're engaging more with their peer group, which is normal. It's also normal for some of our kids to be introverts, right? All of our kids don't have to have this big friend circle. My issue is when they don't have anyone that they are engaging with regularly, or that they have an intimate relationship with, emotional relationship with, that they can talk to and share anything with. If they are completely devoid of friendships, I'd really be worried about that. That could be a sign of depression or something else going on with your child. Confrontational rebellion, apathy for your feelings, more than just a disagreement. I struggled with this bullet point. It didn't fit nicely into a bullet point. So let me explain kind of what I'm talking about with that. So these are the kids that this is more than just pushing back on some of your expectations. This is blatant, angry disrespect. And again, just like any of these bullet points, you can expect some high highs and low lows sometimes. So you might have an occasional blow up with your child where they are blatantly disrespectful. And that's typical. But what I'm really addressing here is it's constant, it's all the time. No matter what you ask them to do, they're pushing back on you. They don't care about your feelings. So even if you are approaching them in the most gentle and nurturing way and trying to understand their feelings, I don't care. You can't tell me what to do. You're not going to stop me leaving this house. I'll hang out with who I want to hang out with. I don't care. That's what I'm really talking about when I'm talking about that confrontational rebellion. Especially if it includes an inability or unwillingness to stop unsafe behaviors. I'm not going to stop sending inappropriate pictures of myself on the internet. I'm not going to stop meeting with unsafe individuals. That's kind of the what I'm talking about with that confrontational rebellion. Does anybody have a question about that? And I am going to have quite a bit of time at the end because I wanted to leave enough time for people, if they're struggling with any specific behaviors, to kind of get those questions in. But aside from those individual behaviors that you may be struggling with, does anybody have a question on any of this that I've talked about?
So I'm not seeing any questions yet. I imagine that there, I don't know if you're going to talk about what if you do see some of these things.
Yes.
What do you, yeah, you'll get to that. Okay.
We will. That's actually, that kind of starts the next part of the presentation. Again, with a cute cartoon, because I liked it. I need love. He's just doing that to get attention. So I know that the little guy is a little bit younger than teens, but really this is the base of it. No matter how, even our kids who are struggling with what might be more significant mental health issues, at the end of the day, what they need is love. They need us, even when that love needs to be tough love sometimes, which we will talk about too. Okay. So how do I help my teen? So it starts with you. I usually include this slide with a lot of my presentations because this is very, very important. Starting with self-awareness. So having kids really triggers all of your stuff. So if there are things that you have struggled with and dealt with in your past, in your childhood, nothing triggers that stuff like having a kid or seeing some of those same behaviors in your child. You can't help sometimes then can't help but kind of reproduce some of the things that you've gone through in your own childhood. So it's really important to have self-awareness around what are the things that I know really get to me, and how am I going to take care of myself so that I can address that. With starting with self-care, and you can see I've got the little food here. Make sure that you are well nourished. Make sure that you are well rested. Make sure that you've got plenty of movement and exercise. If you need to talk to somebody, please talk to somebody, because we need your tank to be full. You can't pour from an empty cup. And it takes a lot of energy to deal with some of these issues, especially if you have a teen that's really struggling. One of the most important things to have on board for yourself is self-regulation. You cannot expect your child to deal with their emotions effectively if you are not able to do that. And you cannot self-regulate effectively if you are not taking care of yourself. Because what your ability to self-regulate will do is help you co-regulate with your child. So you are setting the thermostat. You are a thermostat, not a thermometer. And what does a thermostat do in a house? The thermostat controls the temperature of the house. The thermometer reacts to that thermostat. It's the same way with our kids, especially with our teens. If you're coming at them guns blazing all the time, they're going to match that energy and they're going to raise it. So the whole point is to keep everyone co-regulating at a low hum. Every parent loses their bananas sometimes. That's completely normal. But we don't want to live in that state of dysregulation and chaos, because then everybody in the house is miserable. And again, they'll raise, you'll raise, and it just creates this tornado. So how do I help my teen? Remember that what your child primarily needs from you changes as they age. There was a psychologist out of Georgia, Dr. Jeff Ashby, who framed it absolutely brilliantly, I thought. So you see those three things: safety, consistency, and relationship. Obviously, our kids need all three of those from us all the time, but what they need from us primarily changes as they age. So when our children are babies, they are completely dependent upon us to provide us with safety, or for us to provide them with safety, not the other way around. That would be crazy. As they get into more of that school age, what they need from us is consistency and rules. So consistency, not rigidity. We need to give them expectations, and we need to have consistent routines and things that they can expect that helps them feel safe and that helps them in their exploration of how are they going to engage independently in the world. And then as they enter that teenage years where they're asking, who am I, who can I be, what they need primarily from us is relationship. And that can be really hard, because we've just gone through all of the last decade of their lives providing rules and expectations. And it seems like we need to be putting more rules and expectations on them as they're pushing back. But what they need for us to do is pull back a little bit from that and develop relationship. Dan Siegel has written 11 billion books on how the brain develops and child-parent interactions. And he has phrased it as connect, then redirect. This can be really scary when you're dealing with a child who is chronically angry and upset, because sometimes what you need to do is have less rules rather than more rules. You need to foster that relationship with them before you can. I've also seen it as connect, then correct, because otherwise you will shut them down if you are not working on that connection. And so one of the best ways you can do that is to listen to and validate their feelings, even when what they're upset about doesn't make sense, and even when they're pushing back against you. This is not the same thing as saying, I just accept everything that you say and everything you say is correct. It's really taking the time to listen to them and understand the emotion and the whys behind why they are so upset. So if you think about when we get into these arguments with our kids, a lot of times we're coming at them with phrases like, this isn't a big deal, we've talked about this a million times, you're just overreacting, calm down. that's what shuts them down. So what you want to do is approach them with, first of all, with regulation. Even if you have to kind of shelf your own expectations, calm yourself down, approach them with regulation, approach them with humor can help a lot too, and really listen to the feelings behind it. So that might be, an example could be something like, well, I don't understand why I have to go to church. I don't want to go to church. This isn't important to me anymore. Ask them about that. Approach them with curiosity. Don't shut down. Don't get defensive. And if they're really pushing back on, I don't know what I believe in, but it is important to you, what you want to do is engage them on, well, it's important to me, and I know that it's not as important to you. Can we reach some kind of a compromise? Can I kind of try to get you, like, it's important to me, and are you able to show your love to me by doing this and going with me? I'm not asking you to believe it. Can you just go with me? And that might be a bad example. I mean, I know that when we start talking about religion and spirituality, that can be really sticky for some people. But I just wanted to give you an example of how you are engaging them from a more relationship perspective than this is what we believe and you're going to do it or else. I hope that makes sense. Encourage and facilitate social interactions. So again, it's really important for our kids to be with a peer group. So anything you can do, even if it's to invite some friends over so that they can engage in that, encourage them to go out. It's really important that they have those peer relationships, again, because they're starting to withdraw more from us and engage more with their friends. Super important. Encourage exercise, healthy food, and sleep hygiene. The key word in this bullet point really is encourage and not force. You cannot make them get out and move. What you can do is continually invite them and not to give that up. Always, if you're going to take a walk, invite them to go with you. If you're going to the gym, invite them to go with you. They might turn you down 9 times out of 10, but maybe on that 10th try, they will actually want to go out with you or ride bikes or go canoeing or something. Which actually raises another point. It's important for them to see you engaging in the behaviors that you're trying to get out of them too. So if they can see that you're doing it, sometimes you can get some buy-in into doing it with you. Healthy food's a hard one for anybody, but again, you're not forcing them. And you're not shaming them for bad food choices. You're just offering those healthy options. Sleep hygiene, you're encouraging them. If they're not going to go to bed until later, maybe what you're doing is encouraging them to shut those screens off so that blue light will be gone maybe a half an hour before they go to sleep, making sure that they're getting enough sleep. Just the big issue is you're always questioning them. You're always engaged in a conversation with them. And just talking about it and approaching it with curiosity. Minimizing stress means sometimes lowering your expectations. So if you've got a kid that's really struggling, sometimes your standards might have to be lowered a little bit. Maybe you talk with your kid about, you know what, for this semester, I know that we've always been an A-B family. For this semester, we just need to get you through with C's. How can we make that happen? Or, we've always encouraged you to keep your room clean every day. We've asked you to keep it picked up. I can see that you're really struggling. So maybe can we compromise? Maybe once a week you go through and you pick things up, pick up your clothes. Maybe I can help you do that. They need to see that you are also willing to give a little bit. And sometimes if you're willing to bend and give a little bit, then they will meet that with their own compromise behavior. Ask about suicidal thoughts. If you see your kid struggling with any of the things that we talked about in that what to keep an eye on slide, I would be concerned about some of that depression issues. Keep that conversation going with them. I know that these have been really general, and actually that is, I've kept most of the rest of this for specific questions about significant problems that you might be having. So in the absence of just general questions, does anybody have a specific behavioral concern that they've been dealing with that we can talk about?
Yes, somebody has, a couple of people.
Yes, please.
So how do you recommend navigating validation in areas that are non-negotiables in your family, especially when the kids know they are not negotiable? For example, I don't want to go to that school and you never listen to me.
So I would start with wanting to know what the struggle with the school is and really letting that kid vent and talk about what the issues are. So is it that they feel that the academic work is too difficult? Do they feel like they don't have any peers at that school? Have they felt bullied by either peers or teachers? So I would want to start there and really understand where your child is coming from. It still might be non-negotiable, but there might be elements to what they're concerned about that you might be able to help with. So whoever asked that question, have you already kind of gone through that part of the process and are still getting pushback?
I'm not seeing
Okay.
yet. There are other questions. So what I would say is that, Jenny, if you want to follow up with the question, go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm going to move on to the next one, Amberly.
Okay. Okay.
So Jill writes, I had a situation this evening. That's why I was a little late. A foster dad called me to ask about his teen who was admitted to Epworth last week for suicidal ideation.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight, he's upset because he lost his iPad, a consequence of a different situation, and he stated that he was going to do something he might regret. We decided that he could go to his room and calm down, but his door needs to be open because of safety concerns. He refuses to leave the door open. At what point do you take this as an emergency? What should they do to help talk him down? So really pretty urgent situation there.
So screens are a really, really hot button issue for a lot of these kids. And it depends on how much you're willing to bend. Is your child one compromise that I've come up with when you've taken a screen as a consequence is sometimes that's the only way that kids can talk to their peers is are you willing to allow the child to use the iPad to communicate with people if that child is visible to you? Or is the iPad part of the problem? So if they were doing things that are unsafe on the iPad, that's a good compromise because they're not going to be sending pictures or engaging hopefully in unsafe behaviors if they're in front of you. That's been one accommodation and one compromise. If they know that that's something you're willing to compromise on, that might get them out of their room to talk about it with you. If that is a non-negotiable, again, I understand that you're upset. Now, something that they regret, and if they're not responding to you talking through the door, I would consider that a crisis. So is how to get them out of the room?
Well, it's part of what I'm seeing with Jill's question has to do with a situation where there's already been concern about suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
And the kid is threatening, he's going to do something. And so it becomes this kind of, making a threat. And what is the parent or caregiver supposed to do if the basic request of keep the door open, if the teen isn't willing to do that? And,
But okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, go ahead. Go
I had
ahead.
but if the issue is I'm angry and I'm going to do something because you've taken my iPad, then what the child needs to hear is, I want to understand why this iPad is so important to you. Is it something that you can do with the door open? I'm willing to compromise. I'm willing to give you your iPad, but you've got to keep the door open and you have to use it in front of me. Or was the iPad, the problem is, was the iPad taken as a punishment?
Mm-hmm.
And if that, with unrelated to do with the iPad, if that is the case, is there something else that you could offer as an alternative? I'm willing to give you back this iPad, but we really need to talk about what happened and how can we stop it from happening again, or how can we get it to happen? Sometimes iPads are taken because you didn't complete a chore. Well, can I get you to do these chores and I give it back to you? Or it's because I've done something that I wasn't supposed to do, so I'm taking it from you. How can we work together so that that thing that you did that you weren't supposed to do, you don't do again?
Mm.
Is there some flexibility over that iPad?
Mm-hmm.
I know that this can be very difficult and controversial because you want to be consistent. That consistency is really important, but you also at this point need to be building relationship. That is the primary need of the child. How can we work together to solve this problem? I really, really want to understand what's going on with you with this iPad. I want to work with you so that we're both happy in resolving this situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it looks like that I mean, some of these situations can get so complicated so quickly. It looks like
Sure.
part
Yeah.
of the iPad issue is connecting with people who are unhealthy influences. And so that, I don't know if, I don't know if you want to speak to that idea of when a parent sees their kid connecting with other peers,
Mhm.
but the peers themselves potentially are problematic.
And again, it's really difficult too, because we're also going back to, I want to give you all of the information that you need to make healthy decisions about peers. What is it about these peers that you like? What do you get out of being part of this peer group? Are these good friends? How you define good friends? Those are questions and explorations that don't solve this immediate crisis, get you out of your room so that you're not doing something that you regret. So that's hard. Like if we're dealing with this immediate crisis, I think that the words that the kid probably needs to hear is, I'm willing to give this back to you, but we need to have some really serious conversations about what's going on. I really want to understand where you're coming from, but I also want to keep you safe. And that really, that's hard for me because I want you to have all, and it's hard too. It's that push pull, right? Like I want to cut you off from these people because they're probably not good, but just saying you're cut off, you're not seeing them, basically shoves that kid farther into that hole. Why do you like these kids? Can we talk about that? Now, if you've spent a lot of time, and I'm not saying that this parent is doing this, but if you spent a lot of time saying these are terrible people, these are awful people, you shouldn't be with them, that's going to be a hard sell at this point. But I don't think that it's too late. I think you can still engage in some of that conversation. Look, I know that I've been really harsh about these friends. I know that you really like these friends. I just really want to understand what these friends are doing for you. I really want you to be safe. I also want you to be happy. Can we just please talk about it? I'm sorry I was angry. I know that you're angry. We can talk about the iPad. The iPad might be on the table. Can we have this conversation? And that's what I mean by it. It's hard because sometimes you have to shelf your expectation in order to build relationship. And that can be difficult because it feels like it's backtracking. But again, you're building relationship. I want you to know that I'm willing to listen to you and I'm willing to compromise. I'm trying to give you the best information that I can give you so that you can make the healthiest decisions for yourself.
Okay. I'm going to go to a lighter question. Okay. Constant hair dyeing normal, like 2 to 3 times a month, changing hair.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's part of that experimentation piece. Who am I, right? That's the primary question. I don't know. Today I might want purple hair. Next week I might want a buzz cut. I am trying on personality traits like outfits. Super, super common. And actually hair dyeing, like supporting that and encouraging that might be a super easy way to kind of get a foot into. Be playful with them. That's playful. Could be.
Yeah. Okay. The next question is, as a parent, what if your co-parent has no expectations such as chores? And I'm not sure I understand the next part of the question, but it's
Okay.
minimizing stress part. I totally agree with, but I don't want to not expect anything. So how do you have expectations and not get stressed about it?
That is like, use those exact words with your teenager.
Mhm.
Like, I want to minimize your stress and I want to kind of lower expectations. Can we meet in the middle somewhere? Like the example I gave was, maybe I'm an AB family. Can we get you to a C? Or really trying to understand where the difficulty comes in. Is it an executive functioning problem? Does your teen have ADHD? Can they just not get started? Would they help you sit with them and figure that out? Is it depression? I can't get motivated. I can't get going. I'm trying to understand what's happening with this. And I'm using school. I don't know, I guess school might not be the expectation, but even if it's chores, like, I know that doing multiple loads of laundry a week is stressing you out. Can I get you to one? How can I help you figure this out? I want us to work together. Relationship. How can I understand this? And to say, I don't want to have no expectations, but I also don't want you to feel stressed out. I think even just using those words really opens the door to those conversations.
Mhm. There is a question about whether you can touch on eating disorders. That does feel like a rather large issue.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could put it in the context of normal development for teens and kind of what's typical for eating disorders with teens, if there is a typical.
That is not my specialty area. Um, Eating disorders and dealing with eating disorders is a pretty high specialty area. So I don't really feel qualified to touch on that. I know that, so because they are measuring themselves up against peers, there could be some food restriction if they feel like they are, not measuring up to what their peers look like, which can kind of lead into that eating disordered behavior. I wish I could help with that one, but I just don't feel comfortable.
Yep.
Because it's so highly specialized area of treatment.
Sure. So there's another question. Can you speak to helping a teen whose friend has confidentially confided dangerous behaviors, particularly the struggle of navigating the potential loss of trust and the risk of losing an important friendship and feelings of disloyalty?
Oh, that one's super hard. So I am always very straightforward with the kids that I talk to who bring this to me as an issue. It is important to keep your friends safe. And if you really feel like your friend is going to do something that is a safety risk for them, like potential loss of life or doing something like meeting a stranger, it is important, like keeping that friend safe is, if you love that friend, that is priority number one. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that that friend isn't going to be mad and might not want to talk to you. So the hard conversation with that is how do you tolerate that distress? Is that something that you are willing to tolerate? And that's, gosh, these are really heavy and complicated questions. They're good though. But I am always very straightforward with the kids that bring that to me. Like, you want to keep your friend alive, and I know that it can be, they might not want to talk to you and they might be angry. And how do you feel about that? And how can we deal with that? Is that something that you're willing to deal with?
Mm.
And also to validate too, it's, you know, I think that it's easy as adults to pull the trigger on, well, you have to keep them safe. You have to. It's that you have to that pushes kids into a corner. When you give them the options, that's the important piece of that conversation. This is what may happen if you do this. This is what may happen if you choose this other choice. How do you feel about those two choices? And how can I help you make a good choice?
Mm. So the theme that I'm hearing with your responses, Amberly, is continue to engage.
Yes, always, always.
And, you know, one of the hard things is that as they're kind of asserting independence, they're not always pleasant to be around and to engage with.
Yes.
So, you know, I appreciate your kind of having parents kind of evaluate their own anxieties, their own insecurities, because teenagers seem pretty adept on those.
Yes, absolutely. I think too, one of the things that I ask myself when I'm pushing back, like when I'm struggling with trying to maintain my own boundary and what is a non-negotiable for me is, what am I really trying to accomplish here? What is my ultimate goal? So my ultimate goal, I don't know why I keep going back to laundry. Laundry's not even an issue in my own personal house. I'm just using laundry. I really need that load of laundry done. The bigger issue is I need you to be independent, and I need you to be reliable. I need you to do the things that I ask you to do. That's the bigger picture. So if I need to let a load of laundry go so that we can actually get to the goal of more independence, feeling less stressed out when engaging in independent activities and expectations, that's my big goal. So it's that not seeing the forest for the trees sometimes, and we get caught up in that. Like, if I don't maintain my boundary in this specific situation, then the battle is lost. When that's not the case. So what is my ultimate goal? Am I going to, you know, die on this hill of this one load of laundry, or do I want my child to feel capable of engaging in the very not fun self-care of completing laundry in the future? That's kind of a weird example, but I hope that illustrates the point.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. Any other questions that people have? I'm not.
I would also like to offer, on the first slide was my email. If you let me know that you attended this webinar and you've got a specific question, I would be happy to address that.
That's great. Thank you for offering that, Amberly.
Yeah.
We have about 5 minutes left, but if unless there's other questions, we might wrap up a couple of minutes early. And
Saw the flash.
yes. So Amberly, thank you so much for your presentation tonight. I do want to let our attendees know that I will be sending out an evaluation, and you know, we love getting feedback, and we offer a chance to win a gift card if you complete your evaluation by noon tomorrow. So please complete the evaluations. And I will again send out the video link to our participants, but also to the people who couldn't make it tonight but registered. So, okay, thank you so much, Amberly. We appreciate your time and your expertise, and your concrete suggestions tonight, I think, are really helpful as we navigate parenting teens, which I think is probably one of the hardest age group
Absolutely.
the parents. So thank you, everybody, and I'm going to go ahead and log off, and
Okay.
see you soon, Amberly. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.